The third speaker after this is Jay Allen, and Jay Allen is. I'll let him tell his story. Actually, I think it's better. So.
Thanks, Will, and thanks MPA for having me here today. I guess my story started in December 2008. I guess the last 6 months of 2007, I had a mole on my left ankle that kept scabbing up and bleeding, and I was a truck driver working long hours and didn't think anything of it. I just thought maybe it's just a blister on my ankle from my work boots rubbing against it. It was only after much persistence from my wife that I finally went to a GP to get it checked. So you guys out there, you know, if your wife's nagging you about something, please go listen to what she's saying and just go to your GP. So I went to the GP and the doctor took one look at it and he said, it's got to come out straight away. He took it out, I got a call a couple of days later and he said it's a melanoma. I then went in and seen him and he explained in detail what it was and what could happen. I still had no idea what it was. I just thought maybe, get it cut out, a little bit of skin cancer, can't hurt. So he then referred me to Dr. Michael Quinn at the Melanoma Institute Australia, and he explained in more detail that there's a chance that it could have already spread to my lymph nodes in my internal organs, but we'll just have to see. Because the depth of my melanoma was 1.95 millimetres, so it was in the intermediate range. So I then fast forward a couple of months, February the 14th, I went in to have my first operation, but in the morning I had a lymphoscintigram. You might have seen earlier what Dr. Mark Smithers shown, with a dye goes up your leg. So I had that in the morning and it went up my leg and it lit up 3 lymph nodes in my groin. So it was my doctor's recommendation that they take the 3 lymph nodes out. So I went in that afternoon. They took 3 lymph nodes out. There was a sentinel node biopsy and they took a wider margin of where the melanoma was on my left ankle. So going to get the results 2 weeks later was quite daunting. I was scared, but my wife's a very positive person, so I thought everything would be fine. I went in there, I can still remember the words like yesterday. The doctor said, look, unfortunately the melanoma has affected your lymphatic system. They found microscopic cells of melanoma in lymph node number 2, and I was devastated. Here I was, a truck driver working 60, 70 hours a week to hearing this sort of stuff. It was like completely life-changing. He then went on to explain that I would need a bigger operation, a more risky operation, where they take out the rest of the lymph nodes in my left groin, and to rule out the fact that the melanoma hadn't already spread to my organs. But yeah, before the operation, I would need a CT scan to rule out the fact that the melanoma hadn't already spread to my internal organs. So I had to wait a week to have that CT scan, and that was by far the scariest week of my life. You imagine waiting a week to have a scan. I'm sure a lot of you have. To see if there's any melanoma in your body, I was devastated, and no words can explain what I went through that next week. I was walking around praying to God and just really in the battle for my life. So I had the CT scan the following Wednesday, and luckily for me, there was no further spread of melanoma. It was at that stage, I just knew it was just contained in my left groin area. So that was, quite I did actually get a bit more sleep that night. Before I was due to go in and have the full lymph node dissection the next morning, on the Thursday morning, sorry. So I went in the next morning, had the full lymph node dissection. They took out another 11 lymph nodes, and they took out some tissue from my stomach. So I was left with 44 staples from my stomach going down halfway down my thigh. So you must remember, this is just from a mole on my left ankle. It's like, it's pretty scary stuff to think that something so tiny can cause havoc in your life. So I waited 2 weeks to get the results from that operation, and fortunately for me, there was no further spread. They only found the microscopic cells of melanoma in lymph node number 2 at the start. So I was very lucky that I did listen to my wife, because I've no doubt I probably wouldn't be here today if I didn't listen to her. So I then was given the all clear. I had to have chemotherapy. Interferon. Sorry, I had that. I was due to have that for 12 months. I ended up having it for 3 weeks and 1 day because my liver counts went really high. That was pretty toxic stuff, intravenously every day for 3 weeks. But I just wanted to know, I needed to have something that could possibly stop my melanoma from returning if it was to return. And at the time, I just opted for interferon because, as we know, with melanoma, what Mark said earlier, going back other than 2 years ago, there wasn't much for melanoma. So I thought, I've got to do that. And, things are going pretty well. So in between all this, I was organising our wedding, and I ended up getting married just before I had the interferon. So that was quite an emotional experience, a quite emotional day. But then I went home and was given the all clear, had the interferon, and as you know, you go home and you Google on the internet about melanoma. What is this thing? Am I going to be alive? What's going to happen? So for the next 8 months, I kept going on the internet, and there was nothing available, no support other than my immediate family. And every time I had something wrong with me or a pain somewhere, I would go on the internet, and I'd I'd be awake all night, worrying about it. Then I'd wake up first thing in the morning and drive into RPA hospital and go and see Penny there in the unit and say, look, I've got this pain there. Is it melanoma? What's going to happen? Am I going to die? What's going on? And this went on for 8 months. It's a long time to not have much support in your life, not to know about or others that had survived melanoma. There was nothing for me. So I ended up ringing up the Cancer Council helpline one day, and they put me in touch with a melanoma support group based in Queensland, which was Melanoma Patients Australia. So I got in touch, and we all met with Herman and Lisa and all that. I'll never forget it, at the Sands Centre in Sydney, and we started off a Sydney melanoma support group. And that was great. That's what I needed, and I just wish it was available when I was first diagnosed, and that's why it's so crucial to have support in your journey. So with Harry and Herman and Lisa, we got the Sydney support group up and running, and I still run 4 support groups in Sydney today. So it's so, support can be so crucial in one's journey. But when I was diagnosed, my surgeon asked me, look, do you think anything's played a part in your journey? And I said, look, I was a solarium user. I used to go to the gym and wanted to look good. You're loving yourself, I suppose, and you're doing the weights, and you're looking in the mirror and you want a bit of a tan. You want to pick up the girls. So I thought it'd be a good way and a safe way. I was working long hours, and I thought it'd be a good way to get a tan and, to look good. So I went home, and I got a mate that's good at IT and on the computers and stuff like that, and we thought we'd start up a website, and it was called sunbearband.com. So we started sunbearband.com, and we thought, all right, what do we do now? So we needed to get out there, get out and about. So we started a Facebook page, and we needed an awareness day. So we started having awareness days at Martin Place. Okay, sorry, I'll just go back. This is the juicing. Hang on. Stuffed up here. Sorry. Before I get onto the campaign, in those 8 months before when I was at home petrified, I looked on the internet, and I read this story about this guy who had inoperable tumours in his body, and he lived on carrot juice for 6 to 8 months, and it shrunk all the tumours in his body. So I started juicing every day, and I still do to this day, and I really believe that's playing a major part in my journey, in my survival of this disease, and along with an overall healthy lifestyle. But I every morning I have a kilo of carrots, green apples, ginger, celery, anything I can chuck in the juicer. But I have a lot of carrots, and I really believe it's a mind over matter thing. I believe it's working for me in my journey, so I've been doing it, and it's going great guns. And it's that little juicer there I've had for 4.5 years, and it's a mighty machine. It's still kicking on every day. There's our first Sydney support group with Melanoma Patients Australia. There's a few patients in there that have since passed away, but it was a good day, and that's what support's all about, coming together and sharing each other's stories. And you all know Claire Oliver, the young lady that passed away of melanoma. She passed away, I think it was about 6 months before I was diagnosed, or in September of 2007. And little did I know that the mycelium use would have played a part in my melanoma also. But I'd like to think that I'm sort of continuing Claire's legacy now, and in the campaign sunbearband.com. There we are at our first awareness day at Bondi Beach with MPA, and had full support of Melanoma Patients Australia, which I'm very appreciative of till this day. There's Herman, myself, and Harry, and it's just a matter of getting out there in the public and getting petitions signed and just letting people know that we exist, and just putting it in people's faces. I don't know. At the start, it was really odd. People are like, "You're never going to ban sunbeds. You can't ban smoking. Start another campaign. It's never going to happen." But I just used to go home and wake up the next morning and think, what can I do today? So with solarium use, there's a lot of stats out there, but the most important one, I think, is for those under 35 have it's only just come out, this one, 87% increased risk of developing melanoma. That's just crazy, you know, and young people are still exposing themselves to the harmful rays of solariums every day, and they just need to be banned, and that, you know, they are getting banned around Australia, which is a great thing. There's my car back in 2010. Again, it's just getting out there in the community and just keeping it in people's faces. We used to have magnets on the side of my car, and everywhere we'd go, we just, you know, tell people about it, you know, on Facebook, and talking about it to people in the street, getting flyers made up, and just getting out, going to shopping centres and putting it on windscreens, just getting noticed and just keeping it in people's minds, you know. With the politicians, that's on the left there, you can see Lee Rhiannon. She's now a federal member of the Greens, and John Kay. They've been great supporters of my campaign, and there's the Institute's General Manager, Nicola Ware. But John Kay and Lee Rhiannon, back in 2010, we put a motion through New South Wales Parliament to ban solariums in New South Wales, but it got defeated. I think it was by about 37 to 10 votes, so it's pretty much got smashed that day. But you know, all hope wasn't lost. It was just another letdown. But we thought we'd just continue this campaign. But John Kay has supported me all the way through various public rallies over the years. He's been a great supporter of my campaign, and without the Greens, I don't think it'd be anywhere where it is today. In 2010, I wrote a letter to Professor Simon Chapman. He's an expert leader in public health, and that's when my campaign really kicked on. He's like a great advocacy legend. He is. He really guided me, and he still guides me to this day. He got me a meeting with Minister Frank Sardor back in 2010, and there was in New South Wales, they were going to ban solariums for those under 30s, but 2 days before the election, the government pulled the pin. So it was like, well, what do I do now? You know, I had all hope that we'd finally get a ban. I had that many knockbacks over the years, so to finally get something in place by Minister Frank Sardor was unreal. I mean, I still remember the day Professor Simon Chapman and I walked down the lift. We just couldn't believe it, especially Simon Chapman. He's been lobbying for years, and it just all of a sudden looked like it was going to happen. So we were devastated 2 days before they pulled the pin, but we just kicked on. And as you can see in this picture here, I've got 2 chickens, a raw one and a cooked one. What I did, I went to a community cabinet meeting in Campbelltown, and it was when the new government come in. I thought, you know what, if they're not going to listen to me, I'm going to go and show them and put it in their faces. So I went to this community cabinet meeting and had all the ministers there, Barry O'Farrell, the Premier, the Health Minister, Gillian Skinner. They were all lined up across. There was about 13 or 14 of them, and I thought, you know what. And I was sitting in the audience. There was probably about 100 people in the room, and I had my hand up all night waiting, and had these chickens in a bag, and there's dripping everywhere at the bottom of my feet. This is unbelievable. And I'm looking around, I'm thinking this is never going to happen. And it's Jay Rothwell, the local MP, and I'm looking at him all night trying to get my hand up and trying to get him to answer me questions. And I'm looking down, I'm thinking, you're an idiot. You've come here with these 2 chickens, you're never going to get a question. And second last question of the night, I virtually stood up and I said, just pick me. Come on, mate, you've got to pick me. And he picked me, and I stood up and I held up 2 chickens. As you can see, the one on the right, it fell apart. But all the media was there, and all the politicians were there, and they came around and they loved it. And there was just oil dripping everywhere. But every one of those ministers had got their attention that night. I really believe that was it was good. It really put on their radar that night. But straight after I'd done that, Gillian Skinner actually called me over, the health minister, and she said, "What's your details?" And I gave her my details that night, and I didn't look back after that. A week later, I was in to see Minister of Health Gillian Skinner, and she loved the chickens. She thought it was a great impact, but also it was a personal story too. Whenever I spoke, I just said, look, I've got a raw chicken here. Sorry. I've got a raw chicken. Let's just say this is someone that's just stepped out of a high school. You know, their skin's a natural colour, you know, perfect, ready to go and live their whole life, you know. And then I held up the burnt one and I said, this is what their skin looks like after they've used a solarium. They've just cooked their skin and they don't even know it. The damage is done. You know, the damaging cells on their body that they can't even feel it till years later when they're in their 20s or their 30s, when they're ready to settle down and have a family, and that's when melanoma could strike. That's all I could say. Everyone was just like, whoa, you know, and there's everyone just coming around. But it really had a great impact that night. and to tell you how much of an impact it had, I was at a Government House dinner in Sydney, and Healthy Lifestyles Minister Kevin Humphries was there, and he was drinking. This is towards the end of the night. I think he had a few drinks, and again, I was trying to, never give up on what you're trying to achieve if you're trying to, lobby in the government. And I went up to him and I thought, I said, mate, I'm Jay. I said, I'd seen you at the Community Cabinet meeting a couple of months ago, and I said, I'm trying to ban sunbeds. And he's like, oh yeah, like he's just sort of fobbing me off. And I'm like, mate, have you heard anything? Is there anything happening within the government? And he's like, no, we'll see what happens, mate. And I said, mate, I'm the guy that had the chickens that night at the Community Cabinet meeting. And he turned around and he goes, what? He goes, you're the chicken man. And he put his arm around me. And he goes, whoa. He goes, we love that. He goes, that was unreal. And that's the impact it had that night. And then he told me that night, he goes, look, there's something better happening than a ban under 30s. He goes, you're going to love it. He goes, I can't tell you, but it's going to happen. So what we did, Gillian Skinner, after a few meetings with Gillian Skinner's office and Kevin Humphries' office, they put me in touch with Minister of Environment, Robin Parker. So I went and had a meeting with her, and she said, I want to ban them. My husband's a dermatologist. She said, I want to ban them, but we just need more evidence. So she sent me away to find out how Brazil banned solariums and what the implications were around it. And she also needed evidence that regulations weren't working. So they had their own Department of Climate Change doing their own audits. And they did an audit, and 87 of 89 solariums weren't complying with the regulations. But she needed more evidence, and I went and got a mystery shopper to go into a few solariums, and one of the evidence, the key findings of the evidence that I thought was really valuable was I got a guy with skin type 1 to go in there. He filled out the form. He sat out there, and the lady, the solarium operator, came out, picked up the form. Everything that you could tick that wouldn't allow you to use a solarium, he ticked because it was true. He had fair skin, red hair, and he shouldn't have been in there. And she let him. She looked at the form, she put it down, and she walked him straight in and didn't even look at the form. And that's what it's all about, because how many other people are out there doing that still today? Is it 16-year-olds behind the counter saying, oh, okay, come in. Part of the regulations, if you're skin type 1, you can't use it. And how are the operators behind the counter looking at people's skin and going, oh, okay, yeah, you're probably skin type 1, you probably shouldn't use this thing. It's not happening, and that's where it failed. And so we took all the evidence to Minister of Environment, Robin Parker, and February the 4th, earlier this year, there was a ban announced in New South Wales that solariums will be banned in New South Wales, December 2014. So it was a great day. So we needed a national ban. So I thought, we've got a ban in New South Wales. So what else can we do? So I've met with WA Health Minister Kim Hames, met with WA Health Director Jim Dodds. Currently corresponding with the Greens WA. Correspondence with South Australian Health Minister John Hill, MP, who just announced a ban for 2014, so that's 2 states on board. I met with Canberra Acting Health Director John Willard, with Judy Middlebrook, an MPA member. A few of you might know Judy, who's going really well at the moment. I'm currently corresponding with the ACT government, corresponding with Victorian Health Minister David Davis, and been working with the great professor, as Maura explained earlier, Grant MacArthur, out of Peter MacCallum Cancer Centre in Melbourne. I was part of the Claire Oliver's 5th anniversary of the death, where 150 health workers came across and put a call for the Victorian government to ban solariums now. And then just an announcement out of Victoria just last week that solariums will be banned within 2 years in Victoria, and that was after the Greens put a motion through Parliament and all the politicians agreed that they should be banned. So it's only a matter of time before it is announced. Currently corresponding with Queensland Health Minister Lawrence Springborg, and we're launching a public petition in Queensland just this week. So correspondence with Tasmanian Health Minister Michelle O'Byrne and the Greens. It was debated in Parliament this week, and they all agreed on it, and Michelle O'Byrne agreed on it, so there's going to be a ban in Tasmania. It's only a matter of time before it's announced. I suppose it's just keeping the pressure up, and I've always spoke from the heart, as I just said, but only WA, Queensland and Canberra to go, so the key is to always keep it in the spotlight. Many times I've listened to AM radio and calling, callback radio and voicing my opinion and just keeping it up there, because I know every politician listens to radio. If they hear their name on the radio or in TV interviews, they always want to, and I always made sure I always spoke highly of the government. I'd never, put them down or anything like that, because I don't think you're going to get anywhere putting anyone down. And if they can hear their name and on the radio, on TV, and always say I'm working together with the government, I think that's a good a good tactic to have. On Facebook now, I've got almost 16,000 followers. On Twitter, social media, it's a very powerful thing to have if you're going to get out there and campaign to do anything. And I'm working with the New Zealand Cancer Society, going over there early in 2013 to do something and meet with politicians over there. So who knows, it could just go around the world. And I went to the US last year with Clinton Heal of Melanoma WA, and we went around, made many friends over there and advocating for a ban over there. But I think the American industry over there is just huge. They make an enormous amount of money over there, the government does. It's going to be a hard one to task, but who knows, it could happen. I didn't think New South Wales would happen at the start, but you never know. But just to finish off, there's the announcement with Minister of Environment Robin Parker. I actually give her some flowers. I was pretty stoked that day, so it was a great announcement. And this is what I do now. I'm community coordinator at the Melanoma Institute of Australia, and I just want to get out there and pretty much like Joe and Maura and just Melanoma Patrons Australia, and early detection and prevention of melanoma is vital because it is almost curable if it's caught in the early stages. And there's Barb Brick sitting up the back there. But it's really important to get out there and I run 4 support groups. I'm appointed on the Skin Cancer Advisory Board in 2011. I'm still a current member. There's only 15 members, and the chairman is Professor Bruce Armstrong, so it's pretty surreal to be on a board like that. Australian Melanoma Consumer Alliance with Campbell Rose and all the guys from the Melanoma Project in Melbourne. AMCA, the Australian New Zealand Melanoma Trials Group, COSA, I'm a representative there, and but my diagnosis completely changed my life. So before I was diagnosed as a truck driver, I would never have had imagined how my life would change, but I wouldn't change it for a second. I'm healthy, I have a beautiful wife, I have 4 beautiful children, and next February the 14th I'll be 5 years melanoma free, so thank you.